I wonder, have you ever been out of work? I have had a brief experience of being on the dole. In 1983, a long time ago, my wife Jane and I finished our 2-year course at All Nations Christian College near Ware in Hertfordshire. We were intending to go to Brazil as missionaries, and an organisation in Brazil was waiting for us to join them. However, the development of one of our daughters was giving cause for concern, and at the age of 4 she had not yet learned to speak. After she had had many tests, we were advised that if we went ahead with our plans, she might never gain a command of English, and we simply couldn't make that sacrifice. We found ourselves stranded in Ware, a town we barely knew, with 2 small children, one of whom was giving us cause for anxiety. We had no work, we had no purpose, we were far from our families, and our funds were rapidly dwindling. All the friends we had made over the previous 2 years had left the college, mostly for positions overseas. And our vision of becoming missionaries was in shreds. So I signed on at the job centre and every week went down to get my unemployment benefit. I started making phone calls to past contacts and scouring the positions vacant sections. By this point, I had worked for 7 years as a publisher. I had enjoyed selling books, but I hated selling myself. To hold yourself up for inspection at the mercy of someone's opinion, that requires a toughness of spirit and a willingness to make yourself vulnerable. After a bit, you start wondering whether you are aiming too high. You grow frustrated. You certainly wonder whether God is really looking after you. I can remember at the end of one humiliating afternoon, on my knees, pounding the carpet in despair and shouting, "I am worth something." My wife had a lot to put up with. During this tough time, a note arrived from my former boss, a good Christian man, who delivered to me what amounted to a prophetic word. "Always remember," he wrote, "the Lord is no man's debtor." And his comment boosted my spirits. The Lord is no man's debtor. To my intense relief, I found a job after just 6 weeks. But I vividly remember the sense of humiliation engendered by the process of job seeking and the knocks to my confidence. At present, a lot of workers in the UK are protected by the furlough scheme, which comes to an end in October. And it's estimated that about 7.5 million jobs and 1 million businesses are protected by this scheme. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, who devised the furlough arrangement, has become probably the most popular politician in the country, with the hashtag #DishyRishi. His popularity is likely to fall sharply, however, as the furlough scheme comes to an end and winter sets in, with some economists predicting levels of unemployment not seen in Britain since the 1930s. I am afraid we are in for a rough ride. As many as 1 million jobs may be lost permanently, and you will have seen the headlines this week as Marks & Spencer announced 7,000 job cuts. If you work in retail or the hospitality industry, frankly, this is a moment to think about a change in career. Other governments, some other governments, have sustained their furlough schemes. In Germany, the Kurzarbeit, or short work programme, may be extended from 12 to 24 months. And the corollary of this is that borrowing by governments is going to rise to sky-high levels. And the situation prompts the question, why is a job so important? Well, apart from the obvious value of sustaining your eating habit, to have work is to boost your sense of identity, your dignity, your sense of purpose, your status. However, as the expression wage slave implies, not any job will do. No one wants to do repetitive, unsatisfying work, and the revolution in automation has removed many of these tasks from the market anyway. And with these tasks, many worthwhile jobs also disappear. Furthermore, this automation revolution is very far from over, as artificial intelligence becomes, well, more intelligent. Some economists think that we are on the verge of a new industrial revolution, with billions of jobs likely to disappear around the world. Not just, of course, menial tasks, but the roles currently filled by prestigious people such as bankers and doctors and lawyers. Well, with the need for work shrinking and jobs becoming scarcer, how do we pay our way? And one quite revolutionary idea is universal basic income. Universal basic income, or UBI, already exists in some places. For example, since 1992, all Alaskans have had a significant annual payment of around $1,500 called the Permanent Fund Dividend. And this payment is based on oil profits, though of course that figure is likely to fall as we move away from oil. Another example of UBI, on the 18th of May 2020, just a few months ago, Spain announced its intention to bring in a guaranteed minimum income to ease the pressure of coronavirus on poorer families. Many believe that this move by Spain is a step towards full universal basic income and think that it is likely to outlast the COVID pandemic. It may become permanent. Another example, Germany has just announced that it is going to start trials this autumn of UBI. And it's not just in Europe. In the UK, the Green Party and the Scottish National Party are both in favour. However, even if the idea takes hold, it is going to be introduced very patchily across the world. I can imagine that many in the States would be resistant to the idea. And there is going to be a great deal of international social unrest as the jobs market changes and shrinks. Well, quite apart from the imbalances ahead, losing employment will mean that many of us are going to be casting around to restore our sense of self-worth. But if the measure of a person is not the power of your car or the rank at your bank, how do you measure worth? I suggest that there are two basic categories of worth. The first is what you might call ascribed worth, which is based on exams, reputation, status, positions, titles. And the row this week in the UK over A-level and GCSE grades falls exactly into this category of ascribed worth. A grade, by definition, is about ascribing worth to a candidate. Secondly, there is intrinsic worth. the worth generated by the simple fact of our being. Part of this is bound up with the work of Christ, because you have value as somebody for whom Christ died, someone with whom the Spirit communicates, someone whom the Father loves. This value, this intrinsic worth, has lots of practical implications for the way we behave. And one of the big ones is that you should not treat anybody as rubbish. And that has lots of outcomes. For example, if you catch a plane without thought to climate change, really you're treating people as rubbish, because it's going to be the poor people on the margins who are going to be affected by rising sea levels. There's another aspect to intrinsic worth. Intrinsic worth comes in part from our status as creations of the Most High, but it also comes from the content of our character. And again, our faith has a fair amount to say about this. Paul prays about this in the passage from Ephesians that Grace read for us this morning. I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man. Now, the inner man, or inner woman, is ours to own and develop. And in this task, the Spirit lends his resources. Every time you pray, your inner being is strengthened and made whole, brought into alignment with the Almighty, brought into sharper focus. Now, ascribed worth, the worth given to us by others, is not to be dismissed. We are social animals, and our status within the tribe represents security. And in addition, there will always be those impressed by titles and bling. But the truth is that ascribed worth is assigned by others and can be withdrawn or dismissed. So it isn't really a very reliable source of security. Intrinsic worth, however, is like a fire on a cold night. It's there in our simple existence because God created us. It's there in the assurance that Jesus loves us, died for us, lives in us. Intrinsic worth is also developed from our own soul work, our prayer life, our thought life, our habits and disciplines, our choices to love and to receive love, our choices not to hate or receive hatred, all the many decisions about the matters to which we pay attention, all of these contribute to our intrinsic interior worth. Now, intrinsic worth cannot be kept secret. You cannot fool all of the people all of the time, and as you will be aware, a village reputation is usually based on fact. Intrinsic worth flows out in your unguarded reactions, and it's apparent in the work you do when no one is looking. You should foster your intrinsic worth, because that will bless those around you. Here are some lines from an old Celtic meditation. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. Intrinsic worth can and should be part of the world of work. Here's an example. I married Pen after the death of her husband Bernard, and Bernard was a master builder. And Penn's told me a story about Bernard from the days when he was still learning his trade. He and an older man were repairing the roof of a medieval property, and Bernard commented to his companion, "It's remarkable how much attention they paid to getting things right, even up here where no one would notice." And his co-worker responded, "The Lord sees." The Lord sees. That's the thing that keeps us straight and true. To stay with medieval buildings for a moment, one thing you will notice about them is that there is no facade. They are what they are. To keep your focus on your intrinsic worth is to look past the facade, the face you present to the world, and to become aware of what is truly holy in your own life. It makes you aware of the value of your time, your energy, your compassion, your bandwidth. It makes you alert not to waste what is precious. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7, "Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you." And this fits in with his instructions to the disciples in Matthew chapter 10, that episode where he sends out the 12 disciples on their first independent field trip. And he instructs them to take nothing which might denote authority or status. He instructs them to heal the sick and to raise the dead. And he tells them to walk away from any community which does not recognize them, wiping the dust from their feet. They are to rely upon their intrinsic worth as servants of the Most High, speaking with his authority, and should not crave the approval of others. So don't dismiss what you have to offer, even if other people ignore it. Don't undervalue who you are, or the price that was paid for you. Use the time that remains to you. Use the time that remains to you wisely. Enjoy the sun, enjoy the rain, and the companionship of your friends and family. Care for the world, but be aware that you cannot redeem it. That is not your task. If you look around you, you will see people doing ugly and disgraceful things. Now, the well-being of the natural world, the created order, matters greatly to me, and so I am profoundly distressed by the destruction wrought upon our planet by thoughtless and greedy people who fail to perceive its intrinsic worth. However, that is not the whole picture. And to give one example, I am cheered and heartened by the fact that the very handsome large blue butterfly, which was declared extinct in the UK in 1979, has been reintroduced and cared for by dedicated and meticulous people, and is once again established at a number of sites here. And the scientists and volunteers who have made this possible are aware of the value even of a butterfly. Intrinsic worth is all around us. Let me end with some lines from the poet Mary Oliver. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? in the name of Christ. Amen.